We had two massive commitments on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel earlier today, and another one is coming up this weekend. Find out everything you need to know ahead of four-star offensive lineman Isendre Ahfua's college choice. Plus, they haven't even played a game as a member of a Power 5 conference, and yet UCF sits atop the Big 12 recruiting rankings. How'd that happen? We'll tell you. And Hugh Freeze is not living up to his name because Auburn could not be hotter on the trail right now. We bring in an expert on the ground to tell you why this may just be the start. All that and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud. A reminder to submit your questions in the chat. The only way that happens is if you are a subscriber to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, so go ahead and get that done. Also, please like this video so we know that you're watching. So you go hit that like button. Blair and I, we're going to hit the headlines because there are plenty in the world of recruiting, and we have a five-star crystal ball alert. National recruiting analyst Alan True put in a crystal ball for Mizzou to land St. Louis native and five-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. You might remember in the 2022 class, the Tigers also landed five-star in-state wide receiver Luther Burden. So Blair, what could Wingo add to an already awesome wide receiver room?
Another tremendous playmaker. Ryan Wingo would bring serious speed and a deep threat to that room, and he would give Missouri another star wide receiver to build around once Luther Burden eventually moves on to the next level.
Time to bring out the spatula. Four-star safety Peyton Woodyard flipped his commitment from Georgia to Alabama. That was on Tuesday. The St. John Bosco product had been committed to the Dogs since January. What happened here, Blair?
No surprise on this one, Emily. Peyton Woodyard had been flirting with a number of other schools since committing to Georgia. He maintained several lines of communication open. And remember, KJ Bolden set off some dominoes at safety when he committed to Florida State, and Woodyard pounced on the chance to play for the Crimson Tide.
Gotta follow those dominoes. All right, we have another four-star safety who was once committed to Georgia in the news. Jalen Hayward reopening his recruitment in mid-July, and then on Tuesday, he committed to UCF. He is the second top 247 win for Gus Malzahn this week. What has gotten into the Knights on the trail lately?
At the moment, UCF stands for Undergoing Commit Frenzy. It's realignment. It's been kind to the Knights. They approached their first season in the Big 12. It's certainly given Coach Gus Malzahn plenty of ammo, and he has more than a decade of recruiting experience in the SEC, so a lot of momentum heading into the season.
We have more on UCF's hot streak with our director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, a bit later. But one more headline. We had two commitments earlier today on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Five-star edge Colin Simmons committed to Texas, and his Duncanville teammate, four-star running back Caden Durham, picked LSU. Blair, what does landing Colin Simmons mean for Sark and company?
It means that they are doing a lot of really good work on the recruiting trail. This is a continuation of what we saw out of Texas in the 2023 class, where they started to stockpile defensive options like five-star Anthony Hill and four-star edge Tausili Akana. So Colin Simmons is going to give them another weapon on the defensive side of the ball.
And we are still coming down from all the excitement a few hours ago. Let's continue the discussion. It's time now for the Wiltfong Whip Around with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, two big commitments today, but let's look ahead because it's on to the next. I mean, this weekend, four-star offensive lineman Isendre Ahfua out of Seattle will announce his commitment. You can watch that live Saturday at 8 o'clock right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. A few days out, where are you leaning?
I like where Texas A&M stands with Papa Ahfua. Love that nickname. Took his official visit there in June. Talked to him after the visit. He said his time in College Station was amazing. The highlight that stood out was the player panel, current players talking about academics, the ins and outs of the school, the overall environment they're in, the 40-year plan versus the 4-year plan. He elaborated on the networking, and he just said it was so impressive, just loves the people, loves the staff, loves Coach Bobby Petrino and the offense moving forward, Coach Adazio, his track record, and Mason Smith, the off-field recruiter, all those guys involved in putting Texas A&M in the best position as they battle Utah and Miami going into Saturday night's announcement.
Steve, if Papa ends up choosing A&M, he will join an Aggies class that currently sits inside the top 15 nationally and is looking to add even more weapons heading into the season. Who else is Jimbo Fisher on as we approach the fall?
Yeah, we're used to seeing Texas A&M find their way into the top 10, and if you look at the targets that they have moving forward, that's absolutely realistic. Obviously, Papa Ahfua, we like where they stand there. This could be one of the best offensive line classes in the country, Blair. They beat LSU for Weston Davis. They also have Ashton Funk and Cohen Eccles in the fold. And I also like where Texas A&M stands with top 247 offensive tackle Blake Ivy. So if they can add Ivy and Ahfua, that would be a ferocious offensive line haul for the Aggies. We, of course, love where Texas A&M stands with the #1 athlete recruit in our 24/7 sports rankings, Terry Bussey. He talked to me earlier about perhaps announcing before the season, but I think he wants to take some visits, LSU, A&M. So right now, I think A&M's the one to beat. We'll see if LSU can change that. Texas A&M's trying to rise with five-star corner Kobe Black. I probably give Texas the edge there right now. Nigel Smith, they're battling Oklahoma for the top 247 defensive lineman. They lead for Xavier Atkins on the crystal ball. Aiden Breland and Ryan Wingo are 2 5-stars they're trying to make hay with. Also Micah Hudson. And then Zena Umeozulu is a top 247 in-state defensive lineman that they would love to land, that they're in the thick of it for.
A lot to keep an eye out for. Another announcement this weekend, 4-star wide receiver Jeremiah McClellan. The St. Louis product will pick between Ohio State, LSU, Oregon, and the in-state school Missouri. Your crystal ball favors the Buckeyes. Why do you like Ohio State here?
Well, I think it just comes down to the relationship and track record of offensive coordinator, receivers coach Brian Hartline. Ryan Day and his offense speaks to him, proximity to home. St. Louis has been a bit of a pipeline for Ohio State. Now, there's been times where Oregon has made me nervous about my crystal ball forecast, Mizzou making a late run, but I like where the Buckeyes stand as they try to add to a class that ranks #2 nationally.
While the Ducks continue to battle for McClellan and make you nervous, Steve, they did score a recruiting victory over soon-to-be Big Ten rival USC, flipping Dakota Fields from Gardena Serra, school that they went to get Roderick Pleasant and beat out the Trojans in their own backyard. Who else is on your radar as it pertains to the Oregon Ducks?
Yeah, so Oregon, they had a top 10 class last cycle. They're trying to have one this cycle. They're #3 already in 2025. So they're as hot as any school in the country. On the trail, you talk about some of their major targets moving forward, a few 5-stars. You got Brandon Baker, our #1 ranked offensive tackle. Now they're battling Texas. There's some people around Texas that think they could ultimately land Baker. Great relationship with Ohio State offensive line coach Justin Fry, but we know Oregon's in the middle of that one. They've been a mainstay for him. Same goes with his teammate, 5-star edge rusher, defensive end Aiden Breland. Texas A&M's trying to push hard there. Georgia, of course, but like Oregon, Braden Platt, top 247 linebacker, they're battling Oklahoma for. But some people like Oregon. You know, Eddie Pierre-Louis is a massive lineman from Tampa, Florida. I wrote this week that there's some confidence around Oregon, Oklahoma. You guys are going to be talking to Andrew Ivins later in the show. You can't sleep on UCF or anybody, particularly an in-state player, but Oregon loves him. They've been in the thick of that one for a while. They're trying to make a move on top 247 running back Jason Brown, Michigan State, the leader, but Oregon got him on campus at the end of July. Still have their official visit in place, so that runway setting up nicely. And then Blair, Jericho Johnson, he's one of the most coveted defensive linemen in the country, maybe the most sure thing at the position out west to be a guaranteed good college football player. And Oregon is definitely near the top of his list. Our Brandon Huffman also reporting USC, Utah, and Washington on his short list, but Oregon's loved them for a while. They're going to have a great shot to get them.
Steve, I got one more question for you, but you know what we got to do. We got to remind the people. Hit that like button. Oh, he's throwing up the 2 thumbs up right now. Just trust me, people. Make sure that you hit the like button. Yes, so we know that you're watching. All right, you put in a crystal ball this week for Miami to land this guy. 2025 quarterback Luke Nickel, the Georgia native, has offers from Florida State, Michigan State, North Carolina, Penn State. I think you see where I'm going with this. A lot of offers. But what has you leaning Canes here?
Well, he visited Miami at the end of July, got a chance to throw with the coaching staff, work with Shannon Dawson, attended the cookout, toured the campus, spent time with Mario Cristobal and company. I think that they love the energy and atmosphere around that program. And talking to a couple sources, Miami is definitely the one to beat right now as he perhaps closes in on a college decision.
All right. right, Steve, thanks so much for being here on the show today. You can read more of his work on 24/7. There we go. Thumbs up. You can read more of his work on 247sports.com. Also, we tell you this every single show, but I really mean it. If you want that juicy, exclusive information, become a VIP member.
Beautiful years of your Auburn University.
I will be committing to Auburn University.
Auburn University.
That's a lot of Auburn hats we're seeing on some prospects' heads over the last couple of months. The Tigers are ranked 16th nationally, 8th in the SEC. A long way to go until signing day, but it's certainly been an exciting start to Hugh Freeze's tenure, to say the least. Let's talk a little bit more Tigers and welcome in Christian Clemente from Auburn Undercover. And Christian, going back to the end of July when Auburn made a big splash, literally when Hugh Freeze ended up in a pool, they flipped five-star wide receiver Perry Thompson from Alabama. I mean, it's one thing to land a talent like him. It's another to steal him away from your top rival. So how big an impact could that flip have on the rest of the cycle for the Tigers?
Yeah, it was kind of monumental, and not to make it too big and not to overstate it, but it was pretty historic for Auburn. The last time Auburn had flipped an Alabama commit was Robert Woodyard a couple years ago, but Alabama wasn't really too keen on keeping him in the class necessarily. Then you'd have to go all the way back to 2014, and Stephen Roberts was the last time that Auburn flipped a commitment from Alabama. So it's been a long time coming, and especially for a five-star, DeMarcus Riddick was shown on the intro there, the five-star composite linebacker. The last time that Auburn flipped the Georgia commit was Darius Slayton, who's on his second NFL contract now. It's been a long, long time for Auburn to have success in recruiting. Didn't really happen during the Brian Harsin era. The kind of end of the Gus Malzahn tenure there, it started to dip off a little bit as well. So it gave Auburn some confidence. Talking to a source there at the program, they said, after landing DeMarcus Riddick, they felt like they could go out and get anybody. It was kind of in basketball. You need to see one go through the hoop a little bit, see one go through the net. Auburn got one through the net with DeMarcus Riddick, then Perry Thompson, and then the momentum has kind of kept rolling on.
Christian, the visual of Hugh Freeze going through the water, I think is going to stick with us for a long time. And that seems like a program right now that has built a lot of buzz and a lot of momentum. And a large part of that is because of the energy and the excitement that Hugh Freeze has brought. What difference have you noticed now since he took over in that program, especially in the years before he got there?
Yeah, it's just so much more of an active recruiter at the top, which is what you need to be competitive in the SEC, especially when you're going up against the likes of Georgia and Alabama. You can have these ace recruiters. You can have guys like Zach Etheridge, who was successful as Auburn's secondary coach under Brian Harsin. But in the end, if you want to win these big dog recruiting battles, the head coach has to be there at the very end. And the head coach just wasn't really there the past couple of years, to be completely honest. And Hugh Freeze has made it clear. We were talking with him at the beginning of fall camp, I guess it was a little over a week ago, and he said, I hired Philip Montgomery. I want him to call my plays as the offensive coordinator because I want to be a recruiter. I want to be actively recruiting. I want that to be my number one focus. And a lot of these kids that we talk to say, that Hugh Freeze is the coach they talk with the most. They say that Hugh Freeze is a guy they have a really, really close connection with, which is not something a recruit can always say about with a head coach.
Oh, Christian, it's all the positives. I hate to be this person, but Auburn was in hot pursuit of the five-star safety KJ Bolden prior to his commitment to Florida State. So how are they pivoting at the safety position following that announcement?
Yeah, you really don't have to go too far down the board in the 24/7 sports rankings to look for the next guy up that Auburn is after, and that's Zaquan Patterson out of Chaminade Madonna there in Hollywood, Florida. This is a guy that Auburn has recruited really, if KJ Bolden was one, he was 1A, and Zaquan Patterson was 1B. Auburn really, really likes Zaquan Patterson. He plans to have a commitment there on August 22nd, so within a couple of weeks here. He was also at Big Cat Weekend, just like KJ Bolden. Kind of feels like an Auburn-Michigan battle. He actually left straight from Auburn to go to Michigan and visit there. Miami is in the hunt as well, but Auburn feels like it's battling Michigan for Zaquan Patterson, who, as you can see, is the fourth-ranked safety. So you go from 1 to 4, not quite number one, not quite a five-star, but Auburn still really likes what Zaquan Patterson could potentially bring to the fold there.
Christian, you mentioned big dog recruiting battles. It doesn't get much bigger than five-star defensive lineman Camarion Franklin. He's the number one player in the state of Mississippi for this cycle and one of Auburn's top remaining targets. He has mentioned he wants to commit in early September, probably early in the season, has that official visit scheduled for the opening weekend of college football. We're a few weeks away from that. Where does Auburn sit with Camarion Franklin?
Yeah, Blair, Auburn sits in a great spot. As you were saying that, went ahead and actually just put in my crystal ball pick for Auburn to land Camarion Franklin. He moved his official visit up from the Georgia game to the UMass game, that season opener. I think there's a chance Auburn could get him in the boat even before then. I think as early as next weekend, the weekend there, the 18th and the 19th is a possibility. He ended up not being able to make it. He wasn't going to visit for Big Cat weekend. He went down to Miami that weekend. He wanted to make it Auburn beforehand, couldn't. Ends up making it right before the dead period strikes that Monday. I think it was July 31st. Visits there. Auburn captures a ton of momentum on that visit. Defensive line coach Jeremy Garrett, who played at Ole Miss, a Mississippi native, has put in a ton of work with Camarion Franklin, really gotten Auburn to the top. Tennessee is up there. Miami is still up there. It's still a battle, no doubt. But Auburn feels like they're in the pole position right now, and they feel like they could get him in the boat sooner rather than later.
All right, got one more for you. Three-star defensive lineman TJ Lindsey out of IMG Academy will make his college decision on Saturday. You have a crystal ball in for him to land where else? At Auburn. So how are you feeling about the Tigers' chances just a few days out from his decision?
Yeah, Emily, I still feel really good. This is one that Auburn put in quite a bit of work on him. He ended up taking his official visit in June. It was kind of Auburn and Texas that came out as the two main schools after those official visits. And Auburn feels like it sits in a really good spot with him. This is a guy who wanted to make it up for Big Cat weekend. He couldn't actually make it up for the weekend because of IMG Academy practices and mandatory stuff down there. His parents end up coming down for the weekend and visiting. They FaceTime in TJ during the visit. He gets to talk with Hugh Freeze, gets to talk with Jeremy Garrett. And from then on, I felt like Auburn sat in a really good spot, and I think they'll add him to the class this weekend.
That's awesome. Sent his parents as a proxy for his visit. I love the creativity. That's the year that we live in, though, right? We got to take advantage of technology. Christian, thank you so much for all of that great information. If you want more of the same, Auburn Undercover is the place to be for all things Auburn recruiting and football-related news. Fall camp is officially underway, and Auburn Undercover has you, well, covered.
Put together a staff of great recruiters. We're going to recruit Florida like nobody else. We're going to recruit like our hair is on fire. We're going to go after the best players in America, and we're not backing down to anybody. We've got a lot to offer here, and we're going to put together a staff that will be able to do that.
He tried to warn you. Gus Malzahn is doing exactly what he said they'd do, recruit like their hair is on fire. This week alone, they landed 4-star running back Frankie Arthur, 4-star safety Jalen Hayward, and 3-star wide receiver Bradell Richardson. We, of course, have been paying attention, and they've been paying attention to us, tweeting out a screenshot of our rankings that has them as the #1 recruiting class in the Big 12. That's before they even take a snap as members of their new conference. Let's talk a little bit more about all of the excitement surrounding UCF with our director of scouting, Andrew Ivins. He's here to talk about the team just slightly north of him, and a few teams have been as hot as UCF on the trail over the last few days. They added 2 top 4-7 players, so let's start with Hayward there. How will the former Georgia commit fit into the Knights' defensive backfield when he eventually arrives on campus?
Well, Jalen Hayward, a guy that's been on our radar for a few years now, track athlete. I've had a chance to see him in a few different games. I think he could play anywhere in the secondary for UCF. If I'm the Knights, I would try to stick him at corner. But if you need to get him on the field at safety or in the nickel, I think that makes a ton of sense as well. Very quick to trigger. You're going to see him making tackles here out in the flats. And I think pairing him with what UCF has taken in recent cycles in the secondary makes a ton of sense. I don't think there's a better state to recruit defensive backs than the state of Florida. They add him after landing Braden Marshall the previous cycle, the Damari and Jakari Henderson the year before that, Nakai Martinez. I mean, UCF has it figured out. And when Gus Malzahn took over, I said, the runway is there for them to make some noise on the recruiting trail. It's taken some time. They've been focused in the transfer portal. But now with them moving to the Big 12, local kids are taking notice. Jalen Hayward, by far one of the biggest fish that they've actually got in the boat. And there's still some more pieces out there where they could put an exclamation point on this class.
Prior to landing Jalen Hayward on Tuesday, UCF went into the Lone Star State to get 4-star running back Frankie Arthur. He's also the brother of all-time great NFL running back Adrian Peterson. To go into the state of Texas, Andrew, how much impact could that recruiting win have for Gus Malzahn and that program?
From what I've heard, UCF, they want to own Florida, like I said. They also want to own the Atlanta Metro. And then they're going to go pick and choose different recruits that they want to battle for. Frankie Arthur is a guy that they circled early on. Someone we recently moved up into our top 247. Kind of a weird recruitment. The in-state powers weren't after him. But when you dive back into the film, this is a guy that has a chance to be a workhorse for the Knights. What I really like about Frankie Arthur, just his vision, how he gets into the second level, evades defenders, and then he's got some breakaway speed. And UCF, they also have another talented running back committed, Stacey Gage from St. Thomas Aquinas, a kid that had a ton of different offers. I think they're a great 1-2 punch. Stacey Gage, more of a power running back, someone that can play on third downs. And look, Gus Malzahn, he wants to run the football. That is his bread and butter. He runs the quarterbacks as well. I think those two are going to be the future of the backfield. And then the 2025 cycle, the Knights have one of my favorite guys committed as well, and Tavion Swint, a top 247 running back. So they are loading up in the backfield, and it's important because their top two running backs this upcoming season are seniors, and then the guy behind them is a redshirt junior, so they need an influx of talent. Frankie Arthur, Stacey Gage, going to give them just that.
I love when the timing works out this way, because right before this stretch of wins on the trail, we actually highlighted UCF running backs coach Cam Martin on this show as part of our 24/7 Sports 30 Under 30. And shout out Chris Hummer, who writes the piece, for introducing us to this up-and-coming recruiter early, because we were ready to go. From what you've seen, Andrew, what makes him so successful recruiting the running back position in particular?
Well, he's only 26 years old. He played college football in 2019, so he can relate to the kids. And I've actually had a chance to meet Cam Martin a few times at different camps. He's all about the recruiting, and he coaches as well. But that's the difference, just him being so young, knowing what kids are looking for. And I'll tell you a funny story. Last week I was grocery shopping down here in South Florida, ran into Stacey Gage at Publix. And I said, hey, Cam Martin on our 30 under 30 list. And he's like, yeah, he should be. And he said one of the big reasons why he was going to UCF, had picked them over some other schools, was because of Cam, because he felt comfortable around him. He feels like he can learn from him, and he feels like he can relate to him. So Cam Martin, Chris Hummer did an excellent job of getting him on that list. He is absolutely a rising star. Again, his first three commitments that he's credited for: Frankie Arthur, Stacey Gage, and then Tavion Swint in the 2025 cycle. That's a pretty good start to your recruiting career.
Andrew Ivins going to the grocery store to get recruiting scoop. I love it.
It's Publix,
Gus
right?
Malzahn,
yeah, Florida.
Gus Malzahn, Andrew, has been able to recruit at UCF like nobody before him, even guys like Scott Frost and Josh Heupel. So talent acquisition is in hyperdrive. What about his arrival has not surprised you? You mentioned earlier that you had seen some runway for UCF to really explode on the recruiting trail. What has he done that has really made him successful?
Well, I think it's a few different things. And Gus Malzahn, he has beat Nick Saban. He has won a national title. And he'll be the first person to tell you that. Last year I found myself at a UCF Junior Day, and that was the presentation that Gus Malzahn was giving to all their top targets inside the bounce house. He eats, breathes, and sleeps recruiting. I think a lot of people don't realize that. He cares about the rankings. He cares about different targets, and they have made the backyard a priority. And then they've also gone up into the state of Georgia, into that Atlanta Metro, which I think is such a smart move. You're talking about a less than a 90-minute flight between two major airports, and I think they're targeting the right kids. On top of that, UCF, their NIL, their collective situation is dialed in. I don't think a lot of people really realize that. And UCF is a very big school. We're talking over 50,000 enrollment. UCF claims 300K alum in the greater Central Florida area. And they're buying into what Gus is doing. I mean, UCF, the last time they played Florida, that was in that St. Pete Bowl. They took down the Gators. And I think that was a little bit of a rally cry, a battle cry. They want success on the field, and I think it's paying off. So I think it's NIL. I think it's Gus realizing what he's able to do. He's made the local high schools a priority. You're talking about your Apopka, your Seminole, West Orange. Those are all strong programs, Edgewater in the Orlando area. And UCF wants to get the top kid out of those schools every year. Jalen Hayward over on the Space Coast as well. So recruiting locally, NIL, Gus is involved, and I think they want to win. So it's a combination of all those things.
All working for him. We keep discussing just how great they're doing, but all the Knights fans in the chat right now want to know who is next. So who are the names that we should keep an eye out for that the staff is still pursuing?
Well, I think UCF's going to be active in the transfer portal, right? Like, that's what they've done since Gus has gone there. I think they're going to save some counters for that, but there are some high school prospects out there to know. Tavion Galloway, a top 247 tight end out of the state of Ohio. He was previously committed to LSU. He's a name that's in play. UCF's involved. Miami's involved. UCF already has a top 247 tight end committed in Kylan Fox. I think pairing him with Galloway would be a great combination. Galloway more of an inline guy. I think Kylan Fox, you would stretch him in the slot. Eddie Pierre-Louis, a local lineman out of Tampa Catholic. He has options all across the country, but UCF is a school he has visited, I think, 6 or 7 times, multiple junior days, took an official visit there. Oklahoma's also involved, but UCF, Herb Hand, the offensive line coach there, has done an excellent job of making him feel like a priority. And I think he's a guy that can come in there and kind of play right away. I think that's what UCF is selling. 2 other names, Hardly Gilmore, a wide receiver from Pahokee High School down here in South Florida, a guy that was in the 2025 class, is reclassified to 2024. He has been linked a little bit to UCF. I think he's going to make a decision at some point here in the near future. Kentucky's also involved. Purdue's also involved. Keep an eye on the Knights there. And then one final one, Elias Williams. He's a defensive lineman out of Hudson, Florida. They don't normally have a ton of kids, but UCF was on this guy early. He's added a bunch of weight, someone that's pretty scheme versatile up front. You know, is he an end? Is he an interior guy? I don't think it matters. UCF, I think it was the first school he's visited. He's been back multiple times, and they're battling Florida State. They're battling Missouri. So those are some names to keep an eye on. And then I think UCF's going to keep busting out that spatula. They flipped Rick Darius Farmer, another local kid from Pittsburgh. UCF, they got it cranking.
I'm just excited to see them play some football, too, because that will certainly add to the recruiting pitch if they have some success their first year in the Big 12. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check out the great work. The crew at Knights 24/7 has you covered on all things UCF during this exciting time of transition, all the latest news on the trail. So be sure to hit up Knights247.com for all things UCF football and recruiting. Speaking of recruiting, it's your favorite podcast. It's the Football Recruiting Podcast with Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna. They have a great episode this week. They answered some of your questions. One of them that I thought was so interesting, asking if UCF can surpass maybe someone in the Big 3 in Florida. We'll see what happens there. Tune in to listen to that. You got new episodes dropping every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. What's that sound? Yeah, it's time to mark your calendar so you don't miss a thing over the weekend. Keep it locked here to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. On Saturday is 2024 offensive lineman Isendre Ahfua announces his commitment live at 8 o'clock Eastern. The Seattle product will choose between Miami, Utah, and Texas A&M. Blair, what kind of player is about to be off the market?
One of the best offensive line prospects on the West Coast. Papa is athletic, he's mobile, he's physical, he's a tough blocker who sets the tone up front. And Emily, there's no question that some lucky coaches will be throwing their hands in the air because Papa's a true player.
How am I supposed to go on after that? Well done. There's more happening. Yeah, he is a true player. High three-star wide receiver Quasi Gilmer making his commitment tomorrow. The Cali pass catcher is picking between Cal, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Stanford, UCLA, and Washington. Whew, that's a lot of schools to choose from. But where are you leaning, Blair?
I like UCLA in this one. The Bruins got the first official visit back in May, and they had to weather their storm a little bit as Gilmer made the rounds on other trips. UCLA ranked 16th out of 18 Big Ten schools, so they need a few local wins like this one. So Quasi Gilmer to the Bruins, I think that's where my crystal ball prediction is in right now, Emily.
Right. I like the crystal ball from Blair, a little Blair flair. Meanwhile, high school football gets rolling this weekend in a big chunk of the country. Teams from Utah, Hawaii, California all get their season started. Blair, seeing as that is your region, what games are on your radar?
There's a big game tonight in Utah. Bingham takes on Lone Peak just south of Salt Lake City. But my eyes will be on Friday night's game, Tentview versus Skyridge. Skyridge just won a state championship last year, and they get to face quarterback Helaman Kasunga. He is one of the top quarterbacks nationally in the 2026 class, already holds offers from the likes of Tennessee and USC. So that's two head coaches right there that aren't too bad in terms of QB identification. So that's the big one for me, Emily. Skyridge versus Tentview on Friday night.
Ooh, Friday night lights is starting back up again. That means that the college season is not too far away. We got football back in our lives, Blair, and it's time to answer some of your viewer questions. You guys are amazing and sent in so many great ones. Let's start with Bubba Auburn. How close do you think four-star offensive lineman DeAndre Carter out of Mater Dei is to making a decision?
Bubba, your name says it all right there. I think the crystal balls right now are on Auburn for DeAndre Carter, the four-star offensive lineman from Mater Dei. And he told our Greg Biggins recently that he doesn't know if he's going to be taking that official visit to Texas at the end of September. Could be coming off the board before then. So if you read between the lines and you follow the visits, he took that official to Auburn in the month of June, also made it out to Michigan State. But the Tigers have a lot of the momentum, and this one could end early or mid-September by the sound of it, according to our insider Greg Biggins, who caught up with DeAndre recently.
Yeah, I could kind of assume that a guy by the name of Bubba Auburn was going to ask about a player that Auburn was very close to landing, so we'll see what happens there. JBH wants to know, how do you feel about Georgia's chances with five-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri as he gets set to announce on Monday?
Yeah, that would be that's a tough one because, it seems like they have been, in a way, losing some recruits, right? They lost a decommitment that we talked about earlier. They lost on KJ Bolden. This is one I think that they need. There's been a lot of smoke with several other schools, Oklahoma being one of them. I don't know how good their chances are, but I know that this is one that they need if they want to keep pushing for that best class in 2024. This is a program changer on the defensive side of the ball. I know we say that a lot about Georgia, but right now I think that's the one that they need to continue to build momentum as they chase that number one class.
That's just what they do, continue to land all those program changers on defense. All right, another question here. Blake F. would like to know, how do you feel about Oregon getting 2025 four-star quarterback Akili Smith Jr.? Do you think he could be the guy for the Ducks in the future?
Well, his dad was the guy in Eugene, Akili Smith Sr., and I know that Oregon Ducks fans hope that he's the second coming, not only in name, but also with what he can do on the field. They are in an interesting position right now at the quarterback position because Bo Nix is on his way out after this year. Then the spot will be open. They have two commitments right now in this 2024 cycle in Michael Van Buren from the state of Maryland, as well as Luke Moga from the state of Arizona. That spot's going to be wide open. Akili would arrive a year later, and it's going to be important heading into the Big Ten as a new school in that conference. Akili has a lot of really good intangibles. He has that skill set, the traits, the physical upside that we like to see. Was one of the top performers at Oregon's Saturday Night Live event last month. It's a good problem to have if you are Dan Lanning, to continue to stockpile some of these quarterbacks in the room and then just let the best one win. And I think Akili has the tools to be that guy.
I love it. I was going to say, look at who's their starting quarterback now, a transfer. So you really can never tell the future when it comes to the quarterback position, just with how much movement there is in the market right now. But that's going to do it for us here on the show. Thank you for watching. One more request. Hit that like button on the way out and make sure that you are subscribed to the best channel on YouTube, which is this one, the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. So thanks so much. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.